I wanted to ask a couple of questions, if I may, which is, first, can the administration enforce secondary sanctions against Chinese banks facilitating evasions without causing systemic harm to the American financial sector and the global economy? Anyone's fine.
Well, I would just say, based on our experience in the North Korea context, that was certainly a myth that was out there, that we would cause systemic harm, and it turned out that that was not the case, because it was again, this was a bipartisan approach. It was the last year of the Obama administration, the first 2 years of the Trump administration, and they each had a plan to go after the entities and individuals and the banks that were financing Pyongyang's sanctions evasion. I think we have a tendency in the United States government, I assume this is still the case, to shy away from doing that because we think that will happen. But I think if we are smart about it and we are prepared to understand how far we're not willing to go before we even make the first step, that's important too.
I would just add to that, building on that point, I think the targeting of any sanctions actions just needs to be very carefully considered, because which entities get targeted, what banks might get sanctioned, that impacts the degree and what sort of impacts in the global economy it would have.
Thank you so much. And if I may, this is directed to you, Mr. Asher. Given the understanding that OFAC's got this 50% rule, whereby entities are considered blocked if they are owned 50% or more directly or indirectly in the aggregate by one or more blocked person, do you believe OFAC's 50% rule is inadequate to address our national security challenges?
Absolutely. It's totally outdated. Today, there's commercial data available from a number of providers, including one I actually helped start. I'm not going to advertise it, but it's the largest data provider to the federal government, actually, for financial intelligence commercial data. So you can follow the sanctions pretty much 24/7 in terms of their implementation, because companies will change names, as Anthony mentioned, like we change clothes. But we can follow them through the commercial registries of hundreds of countries that are online today. And therefore, there should be no 50% rule. It should be totally eliminated. It's not needed.
And if I may, just staying with you, I wanted to follow up. Do you feel that there is a lack of sanction enforcement based mainly on resource issues?
I think it's resources and will. I mean, you asked about China. We have absolute grounds related to the killing of 100,000 American kids due to fentanyl to go after the Chinese banks in Hong Kong primarily that are laundering billions and billions of dollars. I would have no issue sanctioning a major Chinese bank. We could always lift it after a period of a month if they came back into compliance. We also can use a non-sanction-based remedy, which I've used before, called Section 311 of the Patriot Act, which will just cut them off from the U.S. dollar and its maximum application. We need to draw the line somewhere. I worked on HSBC Bank in the cartel financing that they were doing for Sinaloa. The fact we gave them a pass because the world financial crisis lives on in the hearts of bankers as a sign that we won't pursue them.
And given the fact that, in my opinion, the Chinese and the CCP are hands down one of the greatest existential threats to America and to the world, and would you say that the PRC has been responsive to aggressive sanction enforcement?
Absolutely. In the wake of the Section 311, which wasn't a sanction, but it was treated like one, the Chinese stepped up their cooperation radically. I mean, including the night of the Section 311, this is a way the U.S. dollar is no longer allowed to be accessed by a Chinese bank or a foreign bank. The Chinese central bank governor called me on my home phone line in Chevy Chase and said, we want to make a deal. What can we do to get out from under this cloud? That was a pretty clear indication that the Chinese government was willing to do something. Only under the threat of force, though.
And just quickly, Ms. Asher, do you think that the PRC would go to the mat for Russia or North Korea, or could you foresee enforcing secondary sanctions against the Chinese escalating to any type of an armed conflict?
No, I really don't. I think that the almighty power of the dollar remains intact. And the Chinese know that. I think that we need to be basing it on evidence, though. I think law enforcement combined with sanctions is the best way. So not just our intelligence, it should be based on evidence, and that gets at the previous question.
And just quickly, with the last remaining seconds, Mr. Ruggiero, same question for you, sir.
Well, again, we only have small sample sizes, but in the case of North Korea, when we did go after China's, help with North Korea, the Chinese responded in a positive way.
Thank you so much. With that